All right, good morning. We are on page 57 of the Regional Study Guide. We're going to start off using map number 4, the SCA map. Number 4, the SCA map. We have a few more things to finish on that. We'll move around with some maps probably today as we get going. It is Ash Wednesday today, so if you're watching the video, that's why I have a cross on my forehead. So I'm not just trying to start a new fashion statement. So that's what that's all about. Let's go ahead and begin with the word of prayer. Heavenly Father, thank you for just being with us and blessing us. We, Lord, just so excited about the trip that's coming quickly, Lord, as we get ready and moving that direction. So just continue to bless our preparations for that, the packing and the mental preparations, but also, Lord, as our study preparations as well. Just continue to open our eyes and our minds to the land in which Jesus walked. We just ask this in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, so event 16 on page 57 of the Regional Study Guide. We're looking at a southern attack. Moabites, Ammonites, and some Meunites came to make war. And so this is Moab is here. Ammon is more out east over here, east of the Medeba Plateau over there. And the Meunites, I can't remember, so we'll figure that out together as we read that again today. So this is around 1850. Israel and Judah jointly responded to Moab's rebellion. So this is part of the divided monarchy. If you ever kind of are wondering how to remember when was David and Solomon, David is about 1000 BC. So just a nice round number. That's about when David was. So shortly after that was when Solomon ruled, and when Solomon was done, then you had the divided monarchy. Solomon ruled about 40 years. So mid-900s is when the divided monarchy starts. So this is well over 100 years into the divided monarchy at this point. But they're working together to kind of squash Moab's rebellion. Their campaign is described in detail in 2 Kings 3, with only a brief mention of the revolt itself. Judah's decision to march with Israel against Moab must have tested Israel-Judah relations. Jehoshaphat, after all, was a descendant of Ruth, the Moabitess, right? Because that comes from Ruth and Boaz, and then Boaz was the father of Obed, the father of Jesse, the father of David, right? So his hesitancy is heard in the straightforward question put to him by Jeroboam, king of Israel. To show support, Jehoshaphat pressed Edom into the battle, probably against its will. Together, Israel and Judah and Edom entered the territory of Moab, but withdrew after their siege of Kir-Heres failed. Moab quickly responded to what it saw as Judah's treachery. Probably that same year, Moab mobilized her allies in Transjordan. Together, they descended to the Dead Sea crossing by the stronghold, and then north to the wilderness oasis of En-Gedi. Here they prepared for a surprise attack on Judah. All right. So this is the Dead Sea crossing, the stronghold. We have a couple green numbers by that, and then we have another number up by En-Gedi. By the En-Gedi Springs there. En-Gedi is sticking out, the word is sticking out into the Dead Sea a little bit. And we'll get to be in those places, so that'll be fun to see these things. Let's just go to 2 Chronicles chapter 20. We'll just do that quickly.
Thanks.
2 Chronicles chapter 20. Verses 1 through 3. So describing what we just read about. After this, the Moabites and Ammonites, with them some Meunites, came up against Jehoshaphat for battle. Some men came and told Jehoshaphat, a great multitude is coming against you from Edom, from beyond the sea. And behold, they are at Hazazon Tamar, that is En-Gedi. Then Jehoshaphat was afraid and set his face to seek the Lord and proclaimed a fast throughout all Judah there as well. So you can imagine there probably were some shepherds or nomadic people that were doing flocks, and they saw this army crossing over, and what do? You go tell the king. So then down to verse 10. And now behold, the men of Ammon and Moab and Mount Seir, whom you would not let Israel invade when they came from the land of Egypt, and whom they void and did not be destroyed. So talking about the areas. Then down to verse 22. And when they began to sing and praise, the Lord sent an ambush against the men of Ammon, Moab, and Mount Seir, whom had come against Judah, so that they were routed. For the men of Ammon and Moab rose against the inhabitants of Mount Seir, devoting them to destruction. And when they had made an end to the inhabitants of Seir, they all helped destroy one another. This idea that God helped deliver them when that happened. So that's kind of the setting, the scriptural setting that we're looking at. So there's some optional discussion there. Just the list of Moab's allies are interesting. First, for the Ammonites, with whom Moab had now a common border. With Israel's decline in Transjordan, their hopes were raised for better times. An attack on part of all Israel-Judah lines would serve them well. To this Moabite-Ammonite force, 2 Chronicles 20 adds some of the Meunites. The reading from the Greek version is preferred to avoid a repetition of the word Ammonites in its original Hebrew. A simple correction in Hebrew allows this reading. It is thought that the Meunites came from the area of Maon, the eastern edge of Edom. These Meunites may represent troops from Mount Seir, a great name of the high plateau of Edom, rather than actual Edomites. Perhaps some Edomites joined this Moabite expedition, since a few years later, shortly after the death of Jehoshaphat, an Edomite revolt liberated them from Judah. So we're not exactly sure who they are, is what that, as you read that, they're another people group. When we look at Petra, there's a people group that moves into the area of Edom later. The Nabateans, maybe this refers to them, but maybe it doesn't either. So as we look at that. So we're going to mark on the SCA map. We need a sweeping blue arrow from Kir in Moab, Hesbab, Edom, Dorar, across the Dead Sea, and up the western shore to En-Gedi Springs. The tell at En-Gedi probably was not yet settled. All right, so we're looking at Kir. So it's about an inch or so north of the bottom of the map. We have that Transjordanian highway that's there. In yellow, it's about a half inch to the left of that, about an inch from the bottom of the map. Everybody see where Kir that is? So we're doing a blue arrow, kind of following some of those paths. You're going to go to the north side of Bab Ed Dara, which is kind of going towards the Dead Sea. All right. So Kir, come up, you're going to go northeast or northwest a little bit, and then come straight across that peninsula, kind of following that road. Come across the Dead Sea on that dashed line, and then go north on the Dead Sea up to and put your arrow ending at En-Gedi. Blue arrow. And then in black capital letters on that blue arrow, right? Moab, Ammon, and men of Mount Seir. So Moab and her allies, is the discussion of the bottom 57, wisely approached Judah by a seldom used back door via En-Gedi. On the shores of the Dead Sea, below a steep ascent to the road which runs through the wilderness to Tekoa. By the En-Gedi Springs, which David and his militia had enjoyed in their flight from Saul. If you remember, we got a couple of those numbers that are around those things that were David's exploits. The Moabites, Ammonites, and men from Mount Seir organized their next step. It appears that the discussion of strategy turned into a war of words and then turned into an armed conflict. The forces which had been mobilized to attack Judah spent themselves fighting with each other, a phenomenon not uncommon in the Middle East. Meanwhile, Jehoshaphat, his army, and his support team began their descent to En-Gedi. The road from En-Gedi to Tekoa and Bethlehem is not difficult except for the lack of water in the wilderness and the initial ascent above En-Gedi itself, called in this story the Ascent of Ziz. It climbs over 550 meters, 1,800 feet, in less than 1 kilometer. So it is a good hike. And we'll see that when we're there we won't go much deeper onto that hike, but you'll see how quickly that changes from the low flatland of the Dead Sea up into the wilderness. I mean, it's almost it just almost feels like a cliff-like ascent, but it's steep. Yeah, we won't actually walk that ourselves, but we can do a little hiking there in En-Gedi as we're there. Right. The steep ascent is due to the major geological fault along the western side of the Dead Sea. We'll see that once above this escarpment, the route levels off and then ascends northward above the Nahal Argat through the wilderness to Tekoa and Bethlehem and reaches Jerusalem. All right. So we're going to put a red circle around En-Gedi and En-Gedi Springs. So just kind of put a circle there around En-Gedi and En-Gedi Springs, a red circle. That equals the self-destruction of the Moabite allies as they turned on each other and attacked each other. All right, go to Jerusalem. So
En-Gedi Springs. On our map, it says to encircle En-Gedi and ascend as is.
Oh, sorry. They updated the. Sorry, I have the old version. Sorry about that.
I know I looked.
Thank you. En-Gedi. Yeah. So if you circle En-Gedi, that's really what we're talking about. All right.
And ascend as is.
Yeah. En-Gedi, ascent of Ziz is there. Yeah. You can see that path winds around. Really, that first kind of inch is what it's talking about. Is it goes very quickly just up. All right, and then find Jerusalem. Everybody remember the secret for finding Jerusalem? Go to the top of the Dead Sea, and then go left or west towards the Mediterranean Sea. About a third of the way, you'll see Jerusalem. Put a green box around Jerusalem. There should be a green number 3, I think, by Jerusalem as well. Okay. All right. And then we're going to do arrows from Jerusalem to we're going down eventually to En-Gedi, but we're going to go basically south and a little bit west down toward by Bethlehem. You see where Bethlehem is on the ridge route there? So Bethlehem, and then down, so kind of by the road down to Tekoa is about the same distance, basically straight south of Bethlehem. And then where the road forks, you're going to take the one that goes down to the Dead Sea, just a sweeping arrow down to En-Gedi, near that road. You don't have to be on it, but a sweeping arrow down that way. That's how they went. And then writing black caps on that, Jehoshaphat. Great jumping Jehoshaphat. So,
He had a big jump.
yeah,
Jumping.
yeah. There was a phrase at one time. I'm not sure where that comes from, but jumping Jehoshaphat. So the attack on Judah by Moab is another example of Judah's preparing for battle and trusting in God. It was Israel who had initiated the original operation against Moab, but Israel did not come to Judah's aid now. Jehoshaphat was left to his own resources. News of the attack no doubt came from a lookout high above En-Gedi, to which robust tourists can still climb today. Right? We didn't get the chance to do that last time because there was rain. We got to see the En-Gedi Springs, but we didn't get a hike at all. And so there's not a have to there, but there's an opportunity probably if the weather's good. It was up the steep ascent that the men of Judah carried booty from the springs of En-Gedi without even having engaged the enemy. And so the Chronicles 3 describes that in more detail. We're not going to do that today, but this describes that. 2 Chronicles 20, verse 3. That's the rest of that chapter. We already read parts of that as well. All right. Now we're moving on to Edom's advance. And so we're going to actually switch to the LB map, which we've used, I think, before. I think it's number 2. So switch to the LB map for this one. This kind of, if you remember this map, it gives basically this is a good kind of overview of Israel, of the whole area, the whole region of Israel. So up in the north, if you connect, there's the Sea of Galilee, Lake Galilee. Remember some big cities up there that we've marked are Hatzor. Then you go a little farther north is Dan and Caesarea Philippi. If you go to the left, we have Tyre and Sidon on this map, if you remember those things. Down on the coast now, we don't have them all labeled, but you can see even if you go farther down to the south along the coast, you see Ashkelon and Gaza. And now you remember, we've marked those as key Philistine cities. You go inland and we see Gath. I think we have that circled. Another key Philistine city. Ekron is near there as well. Jerusalem you find in the middle of this map. And then we go over to the other side, the Transjordan, and you can see down the area of Moab to the Edom to the Moab and Edom to the south as well. So that's where we're going to be looking there as well, opposite on this kind of southeastern quadrant is where we'll be focusing here. And this is the final event of this section. We again will look at a great southern crossing, which you earlier saw on the LB map. The route from Borza in Edom via Tamar to the Negev and on to Gaza. Note that most discussions and markings instructed below are related to this LB map, although it's helpful to keep the SCA map, the map we just had in view. On map A, and regions on the run, you can see two caravan routes that cross the Arabia from Sheba and from Persian Gulf. So if you want to look at that later, you can. They both reach the land in between via Edom. So these routes that come either from the south or from through the Arabia, they come through this land of Edom in the southeastern quadrant here of our map. With growing trade through Arabia, the Edomites realized that their position made them middlemen between eastern desert tracts and port cities along the Philistine plain. Arrows 2 on map B of regions on the run, you can look at that later if you want to, represent the flow of traffic between the regions of Edom and Philistia, the southern highlands of the Negev. So just this area here, to get from Edom through the Negev over to the coastal plain. And then they could go north to Tyre and Sidon or south down to Egypt. They also reflect Edom's incessant quest to move westward in hope of commanding southern trade through the rugged regions south of the Negev and ultimately the Negev itself. The two arrows, 3 on map B of regions on the run, show the same westward look of Edom reaches beyond the Negev to Gaza and Ashkelon. So we're going to mark on our LB map. We need to highlight, so we need the yellow one, the cities of Borza, Petra, and Gaza. So Borza, if you are at the southern end of the Dead Sea, if you go southeast, you'll see cities like, you'll see Zoar right there, and you go a little farther, you'll see Fifat, or whatever that is. And then there's a city that's like Augustopolis with a question mark, and Selah, and then you get to Borza. Everybody see where I'm at? Kind of following that southeastern trek straight from the bottom of the Dead Sea down to Borza. So highlight that. And while we're there, we're going to skip, just while you're just highlighted Borza, just to the south of that is Edom. That's the number 2 highlight. So you can highlight Edom while we're at it too.
Okay.
And we need to highlight Edom so we can highlight that region while we're there. So it's just writes the word Edom just south of Borza there. Okay. So we're going to find Petra. So if you're at Borza,
Which is almost to the bottom.
well, there it is.
Petra is right by,
It should be underlined in red.
oh, there it is. Petra is down maybe 2 inches to the south west.
Yeah. So it's basically about 1 inch above the bottom border, straight below the Dead Sea.
We'll be there too.
Is Petra.
But it is no longer correct.
It's no longer what?
Petra's still a city? Okay.
Oh, yeah.
It's a ruin.
But there's also a town of Petra.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay.
The-
I
the-
know more about the ruins than I
We
do.
stayed, last time we were there, we spent the night, we stayed at a nice little hotel.
We were able to walk down from the
Yeah.
hotel into
Walk to the city.
the ruins.
Okay.
And it's a model of the ancient world. I mean, a marvel of the ancient world. I mean, it's just, I don't know if it's one of the wonders or not, but it should be if it isn't. I mean, just phenomenal. And then we're going to come up all the way to Gaza, which is way over here on the coast. If in Philistine territory, if we've looked at that before, we're going to highlight Gaza. And then we also want to highlight Philistia. On my map, that's there just north of Gaza, kind of on the side of the region of Philistia. Where you find that, highlight that one as well. Okay. We want to highlight the Negev. They suggest doing that on the 5 letters only. The Negev.
Oh, we're at number 3.
Yeah. So the Negev kind of, if you go right or south and east from Gaza, is where the end starts. The end starts is just a little bit below Gerar, as you go southeast from Gaza. And then the Southern Highlands is kind of a sweeping little track as you go like south of the Negev. You'll see the V in Negev. You'll see kind of the end of the word Highlands. So we're going to highlight that as well. And this is all territory of Judah, is what we're talking about there. Anybody need help finding that? Are we good?
The southern
Okay.
highlands, I don't see it. Oh, got it, never mind.
You got it?
Yes.
After Gaza.
Okay. Yeah, we're good. We'll get
Yeah, you go from,
Right, so Philistia's here, and then we're looking at here's the Southern Highlands,
Have you been to Borza?
and they suggest
probably drove
through it. But whatever you want to do on that is just okay.
I can figure this out. About how many miles are we gonna, in the city of, in the country of Israel, are we gonna be kind of, just,
well, Israel's about the size of New Jersey, so imagine
Philistia,
driving over
Negev,
north
Southern
of
Highlands.
New Jersey.
so 20, 30 miles?
Oh, I don't know, you mean total mileage?
We're asking for north to south.
Well, I'm trying to visualize. the
So
size of
from
Jersey.
here to here
Uh-huh,
is about 30 miles.
okay,
From here to here is about 50 miles.
okay,
If that helps. I don't remember what here to here is. I can't remember.
probably 100.
It's 100,
120 maybe, 130.
yeah.
So
But we don't go down that far south in Israel. We go
the
that
farthest
far
we go south in Israel is going to be Masada.
Okay, I just, yeah, thank you.
Yep. All right. And then highlight the Borza Gaza route via Tamar, Aurora, and the Negev and Gerar. So we're going to highlight on the route itself. So we're going to connect Borza over here. So start in Borza, which we highlighted. And highlight on the road, go west on that road. So the one that goes west and a little bit north, all the way to Tamar, or Tamar. And then the road that goes west out of there, you're going to take, when you come to the fork, you're going to take the north one that takes you up to Memphis. And it's going to wind around and curve around a little bit. When you get north of Aroer, A-R-O-E-R, you're going to take the first branch to the left, north of Aroer, to go through Beersheba, and then Gerar to Gaza. Do I need to go through that one again? All right. So Edom's desire for the southern crossing to Philistia brought the Edomites into direct conflict with Judah, who wanted the Negev as entrance into the arena of southern trade. A brief history of Edomite-Judean relations reveals this conflict. And so it kind of gives us the map or the timeline of this. So in about 975 BC, so David is king still. David and later Solomon dominated Edom. So David kind of defeats their military, takes control. They become a vassal state, someone who pays tribute to Judah. Under Solomon, he just continues that. He probably, one of the 700 wives that Solomon marries is probably an Edomite princess to kind of secure their allegiance, all right? Hadad in 925, who escaped David's campaign, so Hadad's the king of king of Edom, returned to revive Edom during Solomon and Rehoboam's time. And then in 850 BC, so about 75 years later, the king of Edom appears to have served Jehoshaphat as a vassal king when Jehoshaphat, king of Judah, and Joram, king of Israel, campaigned against Moab. All right, so you kind of see the generation or two generations. There's kind of some major events, major shakeup. Also in 850 from the east, this is the one we just read about, allies from the east, led by Moab with Edom, Mount Seir participation unsuccessfully invaded Judah via En-Gedi during the reign of Jehoshaphat. That's what we just read about in Event 16. And then 10 years later, Edom revolted against Jehoshaphat's son, Jehoram, And then about 50 years late after that, Amaziah, king of Judah, defeated Edom. And then about 55 years, when the kings of Damascus and Syria threatened Ahaz up here, right? On the northern part of our map, the king of Judah, Edom, and king of Judah, Edom, seizing their opportunity as their attention was north and they were helping north. Edom, the king of Edom, revolts and seized the Red Sea port of Elath, which is way down here. It's not even on our map, but it's the Red Sea splits into two. If you remember how that works on the map. To show you quickly on this one. The Red Sea splits into two kind of fingers as it comes north right here. That port is right on so the Israelites crossed the leftern one when they came out of Egypt. The port that's in Israel today still is Elath down here on the right, the top of the rightmost fork of the Red Sea. And so Moab came down and took that port, or Edom came down and took that port at that time. And that was 735. So with this last revolt, Edom launched a programmatic westward migration that took over a century to complete, but resulted in Edomite, Idumean in Greek, control of the Negev, the southern hill country of Judah, and the southern Shephelah. For centuries, Edomite pressure was felt across the south. One of history's surprises is that in the decades before Jesus' birth, when the dust had settled, an Idumean, an Edomite, called Herod, became king of the Jews. Right? And so who are the Edomites? Who is their ancestor? Who do they trace? Esau. They trace themselves all the way back to Esau. So you have Jacob and Esau, the brothers. Esau sold his birthright for a bowl of stew, and Jacob tricked him out of the blessing when he dressed up like Esau, right? So, if you remember when Israel blesses his sons, he gives the blessing to who he thinks is Esau, but it's really Jacob. Esau comes back and he's like, "Bless me too, Father. Did you not save anything?" And his blessing is more of a curse. Except for, at the very end, he says, when your oppression of your brother becomes difficult, you will throw off his yoke, and something like that. And it's really fulfilled when Herod becomes king, is when you see that fulfillment in this. All right. The Edom really pushes themselves this way, and then especially once, as the end, when the Assyrians come in the 700s, they deport Israel, but they really destroy most of the fortified cities in the south. It really creates a vacuum for, even Jerusalem's not destroyed yet, but it creates a vacuum in the south where Edom is really able to come in and settle now here in the southern Negev. All right, so we're going to do some highlighting here on the LB map. We're going to do blue sweeping arrows from Borza to Tamar. So we just highlighted that road. So Borza, just basically straight west to Tamar, you're going to just do a blue sweeping arrow. And in that arrow in small black cap, or by that arrow, write the Edomite advance. And then do a red circle around Tamar. There is mounting evidence that Edomites took advantage of Judah's fractured infrastructure following the brutal Assyrian campaign in 701 BC. In subsequent decades, a settlement reflecting characteristic Edomite culture was established in the Negev alongside Israelite settlement. An impressive Israelite shrine in En-Hatzavah, biblical Tamar on the LB map, suggests that this site was overtaken by the Edomites sometime after 700 BC. Although it had been a Judean fortress for centuries, Judah's reforming King Josiah may have later built a small fortress at the site since the Edomite idols appear to have been smashed. The Edomites added stronger fortifications to Borza, their chief city in Edom, and they also appear to have taken over ports on the Red Sea. The worst, however, was still to come. Political turmoil abounded in the decades prior to 600 BC. 15 years saw 5 Judean kings. So if you think about that, it's kings. They're used to reigning. David reigned for 40 years. Solomon reigned for 40 years. In 15 years, they saw 5 kings. So, even if we elected a different president every election cycle, it wouldn't be that much turnover as this is. And we did that for like 4 years in a row, or 4 elections in a row. There wouldn't be as much turmoil as this was. Or just change back and forth, okay? I don't think we've ever had that much turnover in our presidencies ever. Like even when you had things like JFK and Nixon, I don't think there's even this much turnover as there was here. So, all right. In a battle with Pharaoh, Necho's fortress by Megiddo was in 609. Judah's king Josiah was killed. 3 months later, Necho deposed Josiah's successor Jehoahaz. In 597, Josiah's second son Jehoiakim died in a rebellion against Babylon. And Jehoiakim's son Jehoiachin, you guys confused yet, was deported to Babylon after only 3 months on the throne. Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon then placed the third son of Josiah, Zedekiah, on Judah's weakened throne. Judah was in disarray. I have a chart I keep in my Bible that I've kind of made, and it kind of shows the family tree and how they moved and the numbers of that. But just how long they reigned really is like, just they kept rebelling against Babylon, and so they kept getting deposed because Babylon was in control. Written archaeological finds help us reconstruct the end of this dramatic chapter in Edomite-Judean relations. A letter found in Arad reveals the tensions of those days. Arad served as an administrative center in the eastern Negev, and the letter, which was addressed to Elishib, the commander of the Arad fortress, ordered Elishib to send reinforcements to Ramat Negev on the you shall send from Arad 50 men, and from Kinnah to Ramat Negev, lest anything should happen to the fortress, lest Edom should come. So this is archaeological evidence, extra biblical, outside of it, just letters back and forth that they found that said, hey, you need to reinforce this place because Edom's going to, if there's a vacuum, it's not reinforced, Edom's going to come and take over the fortress. Kind of just interesting extra biblical things that we see piecing together. So we're going to highlight that. Arad is in the Negev. So Arad is, Masada, you guys see where Masada is on this map? Right on the Dead Sea. Just to the west on the western side of the Dead Sea. South of En-Gedi. Just across from that little jut that sticks out across the Dead Sea. You see where Masada is? Go, straight west about 2 inches to Arad. It's on the road the first road that you come to. Everybody find Arad? Has T-Arad below it. Highlight Arad in yellow. All right, and then keep going west. You'll follow the road kind of south down. You'll see another Arad. That's not the one we're highlighting. And then just there you'll see Ramoth Negev with a question mark. I'll highlight that one. It's just north of Aroer. And highlight H. Uzzah. So go back to Arad that you highlighted and just go basically it's the first city that comes south of it. H. Uzzah is in parentheses. Highlight H. Uzzah. Everyone need help? We're good? Okay. H. Uzzah is a small fort at the top of a steep ascent that overlooks much of the route coming from Edom. An ongoing discussion still debates at which of these sites, if either, is actual Ramoth of the Negev, cited above in its Hebrew form, Ramat Negev. The LB and SCA maps opt for T-era. Do a blue sweeping arrow from Tamar. So blue, that means it's the enemies of Israel. From Tamar to the Negev, be T-era equals the Edomite advance. So basically, take it all the way up, blue sweeping arrow, kind of near, we don't have to curve it around, but the sweeping arrow along that yellow line, a road that we highlighted, up to Ramoth Negev, T-era. And I wrote the Edomite advance on that, so I knew what I was going to be talking about. You don't have to do that, but I wrote in black letters Edomite advance. Oh, you do write that. That's that's number 12. That's why I did that.
Says you're supposed to put a circle around H. Kitman, and you know, I couldn't find that for the life of me.
So is that number 11?
Yeah, number 13.
Okay.
They added 13.
Oh, they have add a 13. So put a red circle. Does it have you put a red circle around Ramoth Negev? Does it tell you to do that?
Yeah.
Right.
And then a blue circle around H. Kitman, and I couldn't find H. Kitman anywhere.
And I don't have that direction on my map. So red circle around Ramoth Negev, which is the Tier era, where we kind of ended our blue line of advance.
I guess I've
Yeah.
been begging for someone who found it.
Did anybody find that one on their map? I don't have that direction. So
The second one that you
It's
are.
over the side.
number 13.
Yeah, 13.
It's
I
where?
don't have a 13.
It's on the
Oh,
side.
got it. Got it.
A blue circle around H. Kitmet, a nearby Edomite settlement. Oh, there it is.
Where?
No, I just saw the direction. Sorry.
Oh,
It's not,
I see.
it's not on the map.
I can't find it on the dadgum map.
I don't think it is there.
That's driving me crazy.
T.
I know.
Kitmet.
I spent an hour looking. All right,
I don't see it either.
well, I won't feel so stupid.
No. No, I don't see that one
I
either.
even Googled it.
All right. All right, a piece of pottery with Edomite script on it was found at H. Uzzah, which reads, "Are you well? I bless you by Kos," which is the Edomite god. The Edomites had reached H. Uzzah and were on their way to Ramoth Negev. The Edomites must have taken the fortress in their continued advance across the Negev. We understand better the words of Obadiah as the prophet speaks against Edom. Right? So a lot of times the prophets will speak, and the people all know what the context of the history is, but sometimes we're like, well, what is it referring to? What's going on? So in light of what we've just talked about, how the Edomites are coming into the Negev, how they're destroying and taking over fortresses for themselves, here are Obadiah's words. "You stood at a distance in the way of as the day the strangers captured Judah's wealth. When foreigners came into Judah's gates and cast the lot over Jerusalem, you were like one of them. You should not rejoice over the sons of Judah in the day of their destruction. You should not open your big mouth in the day of their trouble. You should not enter the gate of my people in the day of Judah's calamity. You should not have stood at the crossroads to cut down the refugees. You should not have seized the survivors in the day of trouble." So this speaking against Edom and what they were doing to Judah. So that was Obadiah speaking against Edom. Desire for the Negev routes generated deep hatred between Edom and Judah. As Judah fell before Babylon, Edom benefited and even entered into the slaughter. As captives in Babylon later back in the land between, Judah could not forget. So remember, O Lord, the actions of the Edomites on Jerusalem's day. They were saying, lay it bare to the foundations. So this conflict between the two. Okay. All right, we get to go to a third map today. So find the Judah map. All right. The Judah map is number 6. Judah map is number 6. It's also a vertical map, vertically orientated. All right. So,
You know, on that number 13, it does say the SCA map.
oh, so it's on a different map. Is that what you're? Oh, good catch, Bill.
Fine print.
Good catch, Bill.
Well, good catch, but oh crap.
Frustrating, but good catch, right? Yeah.
All that time.
All right, so we're Judah number 6, the 6th map here. As we look at this, we're going to look at this map a little bit. This chapter focuses on the Shvelah, the lowland, its valleys, its sites, its routes. This is page 60 in the regional study guide, which became a battlefield between Judah and Philistines in the days of the Israelite monarchy. The struggles in that period illustrate how the open valleys of the Shvelah were coveted by the people of the hill country in their quest to reach branches of the coastal highway. Once they overcame those who resisted their advance, these same hill people were faced with the formidable task of defending this open area, not only against local attacks, but against imperial armies coming from the north and from the south. In such times, the Israelites often retreated to the refuge of the hill country in hopes that their opponents would not follow. In short, the valleys of the Shvelah and their commanding positions were gateways, like the doors of the old saloons. They could swing in both directions depending on what was coming or going. It is this historical swinging to and fro which makes the Sfela one of the most intriguing regions of the land between. So there weren't like solid borders like we have today. As a people, as a nation, as a tribe, you controlled as much as you could defend. And the Sfela were these valleys which, if you could defend them, you could swing them out and come there. But if not, they would swing back the other way. So there were constant places of battles, constant shifting hands of whose they belonged to. And so even in the days of Samson, you had a Philistine city on one side of the hill and a Judean city on the other, or an Israelite city on the other side of the hill. And so they just had these in close proximity to one another, just who could control it, and could you live in peace or not, which most of the time was not. And where are you going to live and who's going to harvest what fields and all of that. So if you look at this map, so we're exploring the name on the map. We're just finding them. We're not looking at marking them right now. So we're on the Judean map. If you want to have the other maps handy, you can do that. The area covered by the Judean map is on its Finder map, the bottom right corner. So if you look at the bottom right corner, you see how zoomed in this is on this map? Notice that you don't see, it's between, so the Dead Sea is over here. We can't even see the Dead Sea on this map because we're so zoomed in. And the Mediterranean Sea is over here, but we can't even see that on this map because it's so zoomed in. So, if you remember me saying at the top of the Dead Sea to the Mediterranean Sea was about 50 miles. So this whole distance covers less distance than that. At the key at the bottom, you can see the whole distance of this map is probably about 30 miles wide. So if you think about that, that would be this would be the size of the St. Louis metro area.
Or us going to St. Louis.
Us going to St. So the St. Louis metro area is probably bigger than this map here, maybe about the same size. So if you're looking at the whole regional map of St. Louis, it would fit within this area. So just help that just kind of orientate your mind for a second to how zoomed in we are in this country, this land of Israel.
Except I can't find Jerusalem.
Can't find Jerusalem because it's not there, right? Yeah, there's no Dead Sea to orientate yourself on that, right?
So bad, my bad.
So it covers most of the Shvela and the hill country, is what this does. Look at the terrain on the SCA map of the regions Ashkelon eastward across the lowlands, along ridges of the hill country. So if you go all the way to the left of the map and about 2 inches above the seam, what city do you see there that we've talked about before?
Yeah.
Gath, right? So that's one of the Philistine cities. So, we're not too far away from the Mediterranean Sea, but that's on the very edge of this map now. This is the interior coastal highway, if you remember before, is what runs through there. Okay, so let's mark on this map so that we kind of get some help seeing this. So we're going to highlight the region's coastal plain. That's in the top left corner here. You'll see coastal plain in capital letters. So highlight that. We're going to highlight Shvela, lowland. That's going to be Shvela and lowland. On my map, that's in parentheses right around the seam. Is that close? I know it's a little bit different for you guys. So if you look at the seam, you'll see the H will be just on the north side of the seam of the Shvela. Okay? Yes? No?
About 20 miles long.
So it's if you go on the seam, you're probably about halfway to a third.
Oh, thank you.
Yep. Shvela.
Where's it in relationship to Gath?
You're gonna go right from Gath, or you're gonna go east from Gath, probably about 2/3 of the way across that seam. You'll see the H.
Oh.
Yeah, see, I was looking.
Just below the Elah Valley, if you have found that piece.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh, oh.
Sometimes the regional ones are interesting. Hill country. Let me see where hill country is on your map. Look in this area over here.
It's on the western, it's on the eastern side of the map.
The eastern side of the map.
Uh,
Oh yeah, hill country. It stretches all the way across the map. I'll come around and help you find the hill country. It stretches all the way across the map.
And it's just
hill country.
Oh.
Yeah.
To the left
It's
of
so spread out.
Jerusalem,
You've got Alice.
Bethlehem,
You got that one, yeah.
Tekoa.
Yeah, you got it.
Those seeking
All the
farm
way across,
puzzles.
yeah. Yep, good. Good. And then we need the wilderness, which is gonna be farther east. Let me see, my map's slightly different, so this
Right along the right edge.
wilderness. Yeah.
That one was easy to find.
Yeah, wilderness stretches the same way like the hill country does, but right along that eastern edge. Right. So on your maps, as you're looking at it, the hill country is going to stretch here, and the Judean wilderness is going to stretch right over here. My map is labeled a little bit differently than yours. The Shvela is going to stretch about here on your map, as I'm looking at that. Okay. All right. Orange box around the tribe of Ephraim, which is on the top right, very top, just right below the border. It's going to be on the top right quadrant, in the middle of that top right quadrant. Put an orange. Orange is for the nation of Israel and the divided kingdom. Put an orange box around Ephraim. That was the strongest tribe. Most of the kings of the divided kingdom come from Ephraim, at least to start. All right. And then
The Israel kings.
the Israel kings, yeah. The southern kings, the kings of Judah, all came from the tribe of Judah, right? Underline the tribe of Benjamin in orange on the top right. So you're coming down from Ephraim, and it's in all caps. Should be Benjamin. Just put an underline around that one, not a box. Just an underline around the tribe of Benjamin. Everybody find Benjamin? So you're going about 3 inches maybe south of Ephraim, and maybe just a little bit to the west, or to the east. West of the Hawaiian Hill Country? So right around there. Okay? East. And then underline Benjamin. Then we got to find it, then switch to green. We got to find Judah in the lower center, which is the southern house of Judah. Yeah, I know where it is on my map, but it doesn't help.
It's about 2 inches south of the fold.
2 inches south of the fold.
Yeah.
West of the L.
Yeah, okay.
West of the Ellen Hill.
Yeah, about 2 inches down.
Underline your box.
Put a green box. Just because basically what it's showing by the boxes in the underline is, if you look at what we just did, we have a box around the powerhouse of the northern kingdom. We have a box around the powerhouse of the southern kingdom. Who's stuck in between? Benjamin. And their territory gets absorbed depending on how strong each one of those ones are. So, all right. Good. So on the SCA map, we saw on the SCA map, so we're not gonna highlight anything on there. The SCA map was this one. On the SCA map, we saw the area outlined by the major sites of Gezer, Jerusalem, Hebron, Lachish. So Jerusalem and this area here is what we're talking about, okay? As we're talking through this area. Each of these 4 sites occupied a different quadrant of your folded Judah map. So there's one of those sites in each one of these 4. So that's how zoomed in we are, is what they're saying. 2 along the western edge of the Shvela, and 2 straddle the watershed route through the heart of Judah, known as the Judean Ridge Route. Watersheds, you see that note on the side? Watersheds marked by thin dotted line follow the line from west of Hebron and north. And so basically, as you see that watershed route, so Jerusalem here, and that road is there. Anything to the west of that road flows to the Mediterranean. Anything east flows to the Dead Sea in the Rift Valley. So it's like the continental divide, but it's not that serious like it is here in the United States. But that's the watershed route. Okay. Also known as the Judean Ridge Route, also known as the Patriarchal Highway. All of those things refer to that same road. All right. Branches of the Judean Ridge Route stay on or near the watershed, which drops in elevation around Bethlehem and lower still on the central Benjamin Plateau. It ascends again near Bethel. Surface water from rain and snow drains east and west from this watershed. The steep western slopes receive more precipitation, but much of the rainfall along the highest summits makes its way down lengthy and secluded canyons through the wilderness to the Red Sea. Dead Sea, thank you, Dead Sea. And so they do have to worry about flash flooding on some of these eastern routes, because it just all comes in these canyons and goes down.
That's why we didn't get.
That's why we didn't get a hike in Engedi, because they were worried about the flash flooding.
flood. There had been a flash flood, and they last for a couple days. They just had one in Jerusalem, big flash flood. But it's gone, obviously it's gone now. I was thinking about that, oh, well, we're not there then.
Right near,
Jerusalem itself,
yeah.
It happens in February sometimes.
Right. The SCA map shows this well and names some of the canyons that are there as well. So we're going to mark on here, we're going to highlight the route following the watershed ridge along the mountains spine of Benjamin and Judah. So we're going to begin at the top of the map. So we're using our yellow one. We're in the right-hand side of the map, so the right half of the map. Up near Ephraim, you see Bethel and Luz near the top of the map. And you see just above that in small, tiny letters, it says to Shechem. So highlight that road. So that's where we're starting to highlight. We're going to go down Bethel and Luz. And then we're going to keep forward. When we cross that first road, keep going south, the more southern one. It's going to go by Mount Zera. It's going to go by Mount Zemarim, by Birath, by at Elasa. You see how it forks? Take the one that goes closer to where the dot for Mizpah is. So the one to the right. You're going to follow that road down. You're going to come to the crossroads. You're going to keep going down until you get to Gibeah. You're going to pass right near Gibeah. That was Gibeah of Saul. That's where Saul's hometown was, if you remember. You're going to keep following the road around. It's going to fork, keep on the southern fork. You're going to go past, you're going to go by the Kidron Valley, and you're going to stay to the left of Jerusalem. The road doesn't actually go through Jerusalem. It goes to the left, to the west of Jerusalem. All right. Go back to Gibeah. And you're coming down. Follow the road. Yeah, right there. And then south of Jerusalem, we come to another fork in the road. Stay to the right, and you're going to go down past Bethlehem. So take the fork that goes through Bethlehem there. Wait, shoot. We're going to highlight that one in a minute. Maybe I got the wrong one. So go to Bethlehem for a second.
Stay west of Bethlehem.
Stay west of Bethlehem. We're going to get the one that goes east in a minute, but
Then you go to Etam, Palhol.
sorry, there we go. Stay west of Bethlehem. Yeah, and as we come down from there, it's going to go kind of more west, the westerly fork just north of Bethlehem. When you get to the next fork, that one goes more north and one goes more south. Take the southerly one that goes kind of next to Etam, down next to Peor.
Falling all the way down to where you box Judah.
They're going to follow that one all the way down near Beth Zur, down to Hebron. We're jumping really far there down to Hebron. And then from Hebron, you're going all the way down off the map, the one on the right.
Right,
So
remember, stay on the one on the right.
stay on the one on the right when you get to Hebron.
You'll go past Zeph after Hebron,
And then down and off.
and Carmel. And you go off where it says to Arad in the
So we'll get that in a
north.
second. So, yeah.
I got lost at
At
So
Bethlehem.
we're going to get that one in a second.
Okay.
Go here, go this way.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I got lost.
from Hebron where?
Okay, I don't even see that.
Hebron, you'll go south
Oh, there.
past, you'll take the right fork at Hebron,
Down and off.
and you'll go past Ziph, and you'll go past Carmel, and you'll lead where it says
We'll
to
get this
air,
one in a second.
to a rod in
This
this
one.
Negev. You see it?
Yeah, I got it.
Oh, that is odd.
Right here. Just north of Bethlehem.
It jumps and.
Yeah, we're gonna highlight that other one too. Yeah, go down. All the way down to Hebron. And to the right and down.
Kind of this one?
Yeah, through Carmel and the south off from that. Great. Looks good. All right, good. All right, good. All right, and then we're gonna jump back.
We gotta mark the chalk moat.
Yeah, we gotta, all right,
You guys know why that's called the chalk moat?
No.
Because the land that's in, the rock form that is in that area is made of a real soft limestone that's kind of chalky. And so they called it, I don't know where they get the moat, but they call it the chalk moat, I guess because it kind of surrounds.
all right, so, the entire route here, which continues north on the Judah map, it's been called the Patriarchal Highway. Since Abraham, Jacob, and Joseph traveled along its various episodes in the book of Genesis. This is the route that we just highlighted. Abraham walked on that road. He had to hit, they were up in Bethel and Luz when they came in. They camped at different places. So it's often called the Patriarchal Highway. I got to grab my power cord. Tom, can you do the next section there? The exploring on the Judah map on bottom of page 60.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Exploring the, okay.
All right.
I'll be right back. Just grab my power cord.
Okay, on the LB map, you drew green sweeping arrows, A and B, representing David's expansion from the hills and across the Shephelah to the coastal highway. Note the path of arrow A in the nearby city names. Now find the same area